Welcome back. I'm here talking with Arwyn Pennington-Bailey about your new book, I Had a Dad Too. Yeah. And Arwyn, there's some key moments throughout this book that really can be quite difficult to read at times as well, particularly looking at your school life as one of those examples. So how did you find life at school?
Okay, so junior primary school was in our little village school in Covington, and it was beautiful, it was halcyon, it was idyllic most of the time. And recently I went back and I asked the headmistress, well, I asked the current head and its headmistress whether I could go around and be videoed in the school, because it's the first time I've walked in it in 60 odd years, 50, 60 years. And she was kind enough to do that, and I walked around with her, which was quite emotional for me. So that was a great school in a little village, but it was quite insular and safe and protected. Then I went to high school, and I also was filmed there, and I didn't know this, but my high school, the whole building has been pulled down. It's now just an open playing field for residents.
Oh, wow.
I'll explain why in a minute. And I just turned to camera at the end and I just said, I'm quite pleased actually, because it was just hell. There were a few moments, but what happened was in the year one we went to this high school. So there was our school, Blackdown High School, and then there was Campion Boys School next door, literally a hedge between our playing fields. Then next door was a girls' grammar school. There was a hedge there. Then in town there was a boys' grammar school. And the politicians and philosophers and experts in education decided to merge all four schools under one banner. I think around 3,000 pupils across 4 sites, something like that, 3,000 pupils. And it became hell. It was just, so I failed my 11 plus, but I'm an advocate of grammar school. I'm a advocate of high schools, because I believe people need to learn in different ways. Some people need to learn in an academic manner, some people need to be vocational, and just pitching it all in together on the basis that the higher performing academics will pull people up doesn't happen. It goes the other way down in my experience. And it was hell.
Absolutely, and I guess my personal experiences of grammar schools as well. And there's a mould with schools, particularly with high achieving schools such as grammar schools. And if you fit the mould, then you absolutely excel. But if you don't fit the mould, it can become a real difficult place. And so to begin with, I wonder, what was the mould of the high school that you went to? What was the kind of shape they were trying to get you to be?
The mould of the high school initially was quite good, it must be said. But we did have people in our year who'd been expelled from other schools for fighting and other things and knife crime. But I would say what it became clear about by my second year there is that teachers were police. They weren't able to educate.
Okay.
Apart from one guy actually, who isn't in the book, this one guy. So we were, I don't know whether it's called setting or stream, but you put in an ability for each year. And this one guy had all of the people in English who smoked, swore, carried blades to football matches, whatever. And he let them smoke in his class and all the rest of it, but he got grades out of them. And it was quite interesting seeing him take the worst performers, and some of them actually came out with an actual qualification in English, and it's probably the only subject that they did. So that was quite interesting to observe, and he went completely different way. I mean, Ofsted would close the school down today. So that's really what it was. And there's an incident in the book where we're playing games after we've all merged and so on, and this, you weren't allowed to wear jewellery and watches in games and PE. And basically, this games teacher, Welsh games teacher, came up to a pupil and said, "Oi," but can't remember what he's called in the book, but say Dave, whatever, David, whatever, come here. You're not allowed to wear that watch, give it me now. And the pupil just slowly took his watch off, and the games teacher had his hand held out, and he put it in the palm of his hand, and then he just went whack across the games teacher's face. Wow. The games teacher then held the watch And he just went bang across the pupil's face. Said, oops, my hand slipped, because that's what the pupil said when he did it to the games teacher. That same games teacher, again, it's in the book, a film called Rollerball I think it was called Rollerball, was around in that time, and there was cries for it to be banned, it's too violent and so on, and some of my fellow alumni had gone to see it and sneaked in. And basically, I think it was called that. Anyway, the games team, it was a game where you had a ball and you had to get it across the line or whatever, and anything went. I've never seen the film, but that's all I know about it. Anyway, the games teacher said, we're going to play a version of that. Anybody who doesn't want to play, sit out. I sat out with some other friends. Others, all the tough kids, thought yes. And then the games teacher said, right, I'm on this team. They said, oh, well, that's unfair. And he basically said, no, wait. Anyway, he then, partway through, about 5 minutes in, got the ball and he crouched into the fetal position on the ball, and all the other pupils of both teams just started kicking him and beating him whilst he lay on the ground.
Wow.
I mean, this was common. And people who meet me go, you haven't got any qualifications, never go into university. I say, no, because I learned to survive at school. That's all I did. I didn't learn, after year 2, I didn't learn hardly anything. And that's what it was like.
Wow. It's a very different world to
very, very different world.
The world that we would know today.
Yes. Yes.
And so I guess there's real strength that's come from the various policies, procedures, movements that have happened in the education system since you were at school.
Something needed to happen.
Yes.
A friend of mine who's a teacher said that you could, at her school, she was at high school, she said of all the teachers there when she was fairly early in her career, she said, I could count on the fingers of one hand decent teachers. You know, and I experienced the same. They'd given up.
Right.
You know, the music teacher, I'm musical, love music. I was doing piano, I was in a brass band, we were in the church choir, we were all musical, apart from my brother. And basically, I was really looking forward to music lessons. You know, I was playing piano, and eventually I got up to playing Beethoven concertos and all the rest of it. And I was really looking forward to it. But by the second, third year, we were there. The music teacher, our music lesson, which was 45 minutes, was basically, he allowed the pupils to bring in a rock record, and he just put it on the record player, and we sat there in silence while we listened to it. That was it. That was our lesson.
Wow.
But I do have something to thank for, because suddenly, so I've been brought up on classical music with a bit of stuff on the TV of jazz, swing, and whatever. Anyway, and I was aware of some pop music, but not a lot. Suddenly, I heard these chords come out, down, 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 and then a piano riff. What's this? Never heard music like this before, and I was a keyboard player, piano player. It was Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell.
Okay.
So it's my introduction to Meatloaf, who became one of my all-time favourite artists. And then I came across Thin Lizzy. Then I came across Pink Floyd. Then I came across so-and-so, 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 so-and-so. So it introduced me to a whole brand new world of music that I then went out and actively sought. So I would say even from that situation of just paucity of education, I found a positive.
And I think that's one of the interesting things with the education system is we look at the academic achievements of a pupil and we say, well, how do we decide whether somebody successfully went through the school system? Well, by the grades at the end of their exams. And that is important. But those formative years for any young person are where we shape character, where we develop cultural beliefs, where we have belief systems, where we decide what's right and wrong and how important we decide about justice. And so how we develop relationships with other people. And so what I'm hearing from you is that academically, you found a lot of it difficult.
Yes.
But you still learnt a lot at school. It still shaped your character.
Yes, it did.
Just not necessarily academically.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. And also what I have to throw into the mix is, like in music, I could pick up most instruments and start doing something with them. you know, and I had guitar lessons, I had piano lessons, we're in recorders and so on, a really decent recorder ensemble when I was growing up, all of us, apart from my brother. You know, my dad had the best baritone singing voice you'd ever come across, and he'd won trophies as a child in very prestigious competitions in the town. My mum sang alto and all the rest of it. So we had all of that, and basically I still learnt all of that and the value of music and so on, but that was mainly due to the home. But then, as I say, when I heard it at school, suddenly this whole new genre of music. And you're right, it is that. It is, how have you been shaped? And we have this debate very often about many things. What's nature, what's nurture? On character and so on. And that's an interesting debate, which we're not going to go into. But yeah, my dad was the same in school, in his master's. So I'm going to, if I may, finish this bit just talking about how he came to hate sport with a passion. But he did watch the FA Cup final, Leeds United v Sunderland. And I think Sunderland were in the old second division. They won the FA Cup, which was, even he watched that one. But yeah, I'm going to read now that, and another incident from my own childhood. One story of his apparent failure and abuse that affected Dad quite significantly was his days at school and his participation in a sports lesson. He was forced to play sport, and he loathed this. It was a football match. The ball went out of play, and a throw-in was awarded to his team. One of Dad's teammates went to pick up the ball, and the games master blew his whistle. "Let Bailey take that, Jones!" Reluctantly, Jones dropped the ball down, and sulkily he ran back onto the pitch. "Come on, Bailey, let's go to it," demanded the master of sport. "Haven't got all day." Reluctantly, our dad jogged over to the ball. He stood over this sphere, viewing it as his enemy. His heart was filled with dread. "Pick it up, Bailey," commanded the refereeing master. A sly grin had formed upon his face, and Dad picked up the sodden, muddy, heavy leather ball. He turned around to face the pitch. "Right, you know what to do, Bailey. Shown you more than 100 times. Dad felt that he'd been shown what to do thousands of times, but despite the repetition, he still had no idea how to perform this simple task. The other players on the pitch frantically ran on the spot, rubbing their hands together to ward off the cold and the drizzle. Carefully, Dad put his feet together. At least he was able to recall these instructions. "Feet behind the line, Bailey," yelled the master of terror. Our dad looked down. He'd even got that wrong. Yes, he remembered now. His feet had to be behind the white line that ran around this arena of horror. Dad stepped back slightly. He positioned himself again. "Come on, for Christ's sake," rebuked the teacher. Dad closed his eyes. He put the ball above his head. His eyes were firmly shut as he concentrated. "Open your eyes, Bailey. You need to look for a player to throw the ball to." The impatience of the games master was evident. "Jesus!" he exclaimed. One of Dad's teammates ran toward him. Dad threw the ball in the vague direction of the runner, as hard as he was able. There was a loud blast on the whistle from the teacher. "Not like that, for God's sake!" The blasphemy was becoming tiresome for Dad. He was really trying his best. He wanted the ordeal to be over. Anger was overtaking his shame and embarrassment. "Take it again, Bailey. This time the ball has to be behind your head. God help us." His fellow team member tapped the ball back towards Dad's feet. Dad looked down. He'd have to pick up this muddy object again, he thought. How he hated sport and this teacher and anyone else who forced him to take part in any physical activity in any shape or form. All he wanted to do was sing and play his trombone and read about the exploits of both his biking and musical heroes. Dad reached down and gingerly he picked up the ball once more. He got back into position, ensuring his feet were behind the white boundary line. He looked about himself. A player came running toward him. He closed his eyes as he threw the ball, whispering an unprepared prayer to the heavens, hoping for a positive outcome. "Worse than useless, Bailey," shouted the games master, offering loud criticism. "Play on." There was a general level of encouragement from the masters at his school. My own seat of learning, Blackdown High School, was adjacent to the relocated Campion Boys High School on one side, and the girls' grammar school was on the other side. The boys' grammar school stood in the centre of the town, and some policymakers and a committee of well-meaning but foolish professors and politicians decided that if all kids from all backgrounds were put together, the better students would help the worse ones. Idiots. Let me highlight a few examples as to why this approach never worked for me, along with an entire generation of students who attended the largest comprehensive school in the West Midlands, numbering many thousands of pupils across 4 sites, and how this left-wing ideology ruined 4 schools. "You, come here," barked the young female teacher who was undertaking her probationary year to the unruly and obstinate Man U supporter seated at the back of our class, who was attired in DMs, Oxford bags and a short tie, with his top button undone. This guy, Danny Johnson, was one of the tough kids. He was there in attendance at every home game at Old Trafford or Man U, fighting the opposition fans wherever he was able to find them, applying no mercy. The adrenaline rush was everything to him. Slowly, and obedience to his summons by the young, nervous teacher with a great deal of nonchalance and a wide grin, he stood up and sauntered to the front of our class with a jaunty swagger. The nervous young teacher stood waiting for him. He arrived at the front of the class. He hitched up his trousers and put his hands into the pockets of his Oxford bags. He was chewing gum. "You're not allowed to chew gum, Johnson." Danny looked about the class with a wide grin upon his face. "Says who?" "Says me," snapped the increasingly nervy teacher. Danny stood there weighing up his options. He didn't care. He sniffed. The teacher rummaged around for a tissue in a bag that was sitting on a desk. In doing so, she had to lean past Danny. He wasn't going to move. Miss Simpson brushed against Danny. His mates at the back of the class sniggered. It was a hot day in this terrapin hut that had been constructed, along with several others, as the main school building was A, no longer big enough, and B, from memory, the asbestos issue had caused some of the classrooms to be removed from service until the poisonous material was removed. Miss Simpson stood up, regained her composure. She held out the palm of her hand, now covered by a tissue. "Spit it out, Johnson, now," she demanded. Danny looked at her, considering a moment of defiance, but he wanted to get out of here. He didn't want another detention. He didn't mind the caning. He tolerated these. After suffering from one such beating by a master, partially pulled down his bags and pants in the playground during a break to show his fellow pupils the welts across his backside that had formed after he'd bent over and suffered from some severe corporal punishment. For both he and his mates, these marks symbolised a badge of honour. Danny spat out the gum into the proffered tissue. Deliberate or not, some globules of saliva came out of it. Relieved, Simpson wrapped up the gum. She held it out for Danny. "Take it," she instructed. "Chew it in your own time, not mine." He took the gift-wrapped gum, smirked, and awaited his dismissal. "Back to your seat now." Miss Simpson spoke harshly, attempting to maintain a semblance of authority. She turned back to the blackboard and started to write and speak. She intended to continue with the lesson. Danny turned away and started to walk back to his seat. Most of our eyes followed his slow journey. Our attention was far from the front of the class to this seat of learning. As he walked back to his desk, another pupil, Kev Rawlinson, seated about halfway down the classroom, was bending down, trying to retrieve his pencil that had rolled onto his desk and onto the floor. Danny saw his fellow classmate, Kev, a silent guy, kept himself to himself, never bullied, bending down with his face towards the floor. Danny swung his leg back, kicked Kev full in the face. His DMs connected to the human flesh with a mighty amount of force. Stunned, Kev staggered to his feet. Holding back the tears, he stumbled, ran out of the classroom. The commotion and the banging of the classroom doors, Kev exited, caused Simpson to swing round and face us. Why did he run out, she demanded of us. No one answered. Then slowly one of my friends put his hand up. Danny kicked Kev in the face, miss. Is this true? Asked the nervous teacher, who was now out of control of the class. I'm sure she'd never faced anything like this. No lecture had covered this during her studies to attain a B.Ed, perhaps with honours. Perhaps now she doubted her life choice. She looked at me for confirmation slowly. I nodded. She knew that she was unable to leave the classroom. She also realised she was unable to punish Danny as she hadn't seen the incident. From memory, she just continued with the lesson, with some form of rebuke being thrown in the way of Danny. Johnson had won the day. He sat there smugly, gazing out of the window.
In the mire of our tears, in the mire of our tears.